Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Monday. Brian Kamenetzky, Andy Kamenetzky, Rob Pelinka talks about the Luka Doncic era and what it means to have one of those dudes on your squad. That's next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, no matter how, where you get your podcasts. This one's always going to be free and never behind a paywall. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go hang out. With over 36,000 subscribers to the channel, Andy. They are leaving questions and comments as we get closer and closer and closer to media day and the start of training camp and real stuff with real players on real basketball courts to begin discussing. So plenty of stuff to do over the course of this week as we prepare for that. Lots to break down in this show, Andy, including some interesting and provocative comments from Robert Horry on the future of Austin Reaves, what it maybe should be with the Lakers, and stuff to look there at. Jared Vanderbilt's potential role, news in the Andrew Wiggins trade market, as a significant injury takes place in Miami. So plenty to cover. But first, Andy, Rob Pelinka said a bunch of stuff to Dave McMenamin in a story for ESPN that published, I believe, going into the weekend on Friday. And very clearly putting Luka up into the ranks of the best players in the NBA, if not the best. Something that was reflected in his play during Eurobasket.
And in particular, the stuff that jumped out at us is the stuff that Rob said when it comes to what a player like Luka means. As you said, one of those dudes, what it brings to your team, but also what it may mean right now for the Lakers and the approach this season. Quote, Luka's play in Eurobasket made it clear to the entire basketball world that he is on that incredibly short list of best player on the planet candidates, if not at the top in terms of team building. We've talked about the importance of having optionality. And when I use that word, it's not to say the future. I think optionality is also in the now. Having both Luka as arguably the best player on the planet and LeBron James, who is still in the mix of being one of the great players in our game, even at his age, continues to allow us to think carefully about that value of optionality. Rob then later said, if there are smart ways to pour into our championship aspirations for the next year, we will execute on those. And having seen those two players on our team next year as an important moment, and we'll continue to try to do all of those to deliver the franchise its 18th championship. Later in McMenamin's piece, quote, he, being Luka, stresses every single day that his goal is to win a championship, a source close to Doncic told ESPN. He trusts the front office to do their job, and he trusts what they're building. So it speaks to not just Rob Pelinka having perhaps a grander and more aggressive vision for the roster and its potential this season and the things that they might try to do this season, but also working hand in glove with Luka and having Luka's approval.
Well, I think, this relation, the two things about this. I mean, I think the optionality thing is an interesting topic of conversation for a couple reasons. And, and is particularly relevant when you're talking about a player like Luka. But, I think this question, though, too, of the relationship is a great critical starting point because, I don't think anybody was expecting problems when Luka was traded to the Lakers. I think everybody expected that he would sign an extension in LA. I think they expected that, the Lakers would sort of roll out the red carpet because that's what they do. And like this aspect of sort of player management is kind of their specialty. In terms of making stars feel welcome and comfortable and like they are the center of the universe. This is what they do. But even with all that, it's gone better than anybody could possibly have outlined, or at the very least, it's at the top. It's ticked every box of like, If you could just pick everything, what would you want to pick? You'd want to pick Luka gets in fantastic shape. What it means for his health, we'll see. We don't know. Nothing is guaranteed in this world. But if you ask the Lakers privately, they would have said, publicly, they'd be like, we love Luka. We trust him to do what's right. And we know he is going to be a professional, all that stuff. Privately, they'd be like, damn, it'd be great if he just got himself in phenomenal shape. And that's exactly what he did. They would have been fine if the signing summer waited until after a Eurobasket. Totally fine. That's typically how Luka's been doing it throughout his career. But they'd have been like, would be really cool if he signed on the first day. Like, that'd be great. And he did. Wouldn't it be cool if Luka went out and recruited free agents for us? All these other things, all of these things, Andy, every box in this relationship. And then you add, and I know you think this sort of stuff is significant, the Lakers hopping on a plane and going to Eurobasket and showing up at practice in Poland and all of this stuff has gone letter perfect to what you would want it to be.
Well, it's all been a part of continual communication and conversation and connection with Luka throughout, since the moment really he's arrived through that trade. But then once the season ended, because I remember when reports first started surfacing of the 2027 offseason emphasis and the idea of not wanting to take on longer contracts or anything that went past 2027 because they were looking ahead to potentially Giannis or potentially Jokic, stuff that we've talked about ad nauseum this offseason. And I have always maintained my skepticism about just how hard and fast that really
was. You and I have sort of different theories about what's happening now with what Rob's saying.
But one of the things that I said at the time, beyond, again, just certainly not buying it as much as other people who cover the team or some of the people reporting it, is one of the things that people would say as the danger of this plan would be you need to get Luka to sign an extension. And if you're essentially just sitting on your hands this offseason, you could risk Luka not signing. And my reaction to that was always, look, I don't think this is a good approach. But if they're doing it, it better be because they're talking with Luka, and Luka is saying he understands why they're doing it. Again, in theory, reportedly, whatever. This is something they're running past Luka, and Luka approves it for whatever reason. As long as Luka is on board with the things that they're doing, it doesn't matter if you or me, Brian, or any of the people that cover this team, the fans, whoever, it doesn't matter if we approve of it. What matters is, does Luka approve of it? And it's become very clear, I think, as this offseason has progressed, whether you're talking about Luka recruiting free agents during the offseason, whether you're talking about Luka's very outward commitment to the franchise, Pelinka, Genie, the Rambi, everybody going overseas to support Luka. There has been a continual conversation with Luka and staying on the same page with him. And, as much as I suppose maybe they gained inspiration from seeing Luka in Eurobasket, both of us find that kind of insane that all of a sudden watching him, dominate with Slovenia would make them say, we got a pretty good player on our hands.
Pretty good player.
Maybe we ought to do something with it. But whatever is the impetus for all this, and I do want to talk about Darius Soriano and Pete Zayas over the Lakers Film Room podcast had an interesting theory that I think is worth mentioning as well. But whatever the impetus is, what matters most is, are they doing the things that make Luka happy and as committed as possible to the organization? If the answer is yes, that's what matters most, more than anything else.
Yeah. Let's get to that theory that you wanted to bring in there. And then I want to get into a little bit more of this idea of optionality still to come. Robert Horry's thoughts on what to do with Austin Reaves. So plenty left in this show coming up next.
Locked on Lakers is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy Drink. It is time to fuel up and turn it up with 5 Hour Energy Transfusion, combining the grape, ginger and lime flavors of your favorite golf drink into a quick, energizing shot, whether you're sinking birdies or just making memories with friends. It's a hole-in-one for your energy game. You never know when the perfect shot is coming. I have always said, what makes golf such an addictive game for regular people like you and me is that every now and then we will hit a shot that a pro could not have hit any better. And it feels amazing, but you got to be ready for that moment and properly energized. Golf is about good times with good people, good shots, and also good flavors. The grape ginger lime flavor of 5-hour energy transfusion gives you the best part of the clubhouse go-to drink without leaving the course or chasing down the bev cart. And you can amp up the fun even more now. Just buy, snap, and enter for a chance to win a dream golf trip for 2 to any tournament in the USA. Tee up the trip. Visit 5hewin.com. It's the number 5, hewin.com for full rules and entry. There's no purchase necessary. It excludes the Masters tournament, and the offer ends October 31st, 2025.
All right, so I have not heard this. I'm a couple episodes behind with my friends at the Laker Film Room podcast. So this theory that you've heard from Darius and Pete.
I thought this was interesting, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit. I don't have their exact quotes in front of them, but basically the idea.
We're aggregating.
We are there are friends. I hope they don't mind, but the idea that if Rob Pelinka's thinking on this has radically changed. Like, let's just say that the idea of optionality, as it has often been interpreted as maximum cap space and as few long-term commitments as possible. So in Rob Pelinka's mind, you get the most accessibility and optionality towards landing superstar free agents that may or may not be available. But that was Rob Pelinka's main focus. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that's what it was. And based on Rob's comments, it is shifting, whether you believe Rob or not, that it actually did shift. If it has, it could be Darius and Pete positive. And I thought this was an interesting idea. The idea that Mark Walter, while he is not officially the primary owner of this team, it's happening soon, and everybody knows he is eventually going to be the guy that everyone has to please. And therefore, what he wants already matters, even if he's not officially yet the top shot caller. If Mark Walter is looking at this roster and saying, why are we looking ahead to a couple years from now when we have Luka and LeBron and Austin Reaves and a roster that, at the very least, the top end of it is pretty talented. They won 50 games last year. You're going to have a full training camp with JJ Redick, everybody coming in seemingly healthy, knock on wood, for another week or so. Why would you look ahead towards a couple seasons at the expense of the right now? And if Mark Walter is making that clear, Rob is GMing for his future job. And maybe there's been a shift because the new ultimate shot caller is making it clear, no. I want to maximize now. I'm not worried. We will worry about the ability to get or not get Giannis in a couple years. I want to win now.
That theory is plausible to me. It is certainly based on the idea of somebody, of the idea that, the Lakers wanted to keep that flexibility and prizing that perhaps a little more than new ownership wants them to, and that message being made clear, like, no, that doesn't need to be our top priority.
It also tracks with the way the Dodgers are run as well.
It kind of does. But I mean, the Dodgers
sport,
are
but aggressiveness.
Right, aggressive. The Dodgers really run in a way that the Lakers, that Lakers fans in almost every way would want the Lakers to run. Different sports, things won't translate fully apples to apples, but the Dodgers are excellent at, obviously they are aggressive. They use every tool they can. They will, in baseball, you're allowed to spend lots and lots and gobs of money, and the Dodgers do, but they are also really good at asset management. They don't just trade away all their prospects, trade away. They acquire guys. They pick up players that they can then use, spare prospects, guys that don't have a place on their team. They don't hoard them. They trade them and they use them, get some different prospects that they can use for other trades down the road. And so they're very good at maximizing the ability for improvement along every track that is offered to them. And so I think the Lakers, obviously, they have actually spent money on the roster, but they haven't spent money in other places. They tend to de-emphasize the draft. They have not historically been great on the margins and finding those extra 2 second-round picks that suddenly allow you to unlock this other deal a year and a half later that nobody, like the interconnectedness of all that stuff. And I just think that some of this is just Rob. I mean, what Rob to me is kind of famous for is seeing where the environment is and putting out some sort of message that he thinks supports what the team happens to be doing at the time. And so
he'd be a good politician that way.
Oh, Rob is a politician.
But I mean an actual politician. But you are correct.
He'd be a good politician in the sense of he has a lot of those qualities that I'll put it this way. I don't think Rob would interpret what you just said as a compliment.
I don't mean it as a compliment or an insult. I'm talking about that is similar to political instincts.
Right.
Like the way political instincts
that's something
work.
That people dislike about politicians is that they feel like they're just being delivered a message based on whatever it is. But like going into this summer,
they are still allowed to deliver after,
of course,
looking their finger and seeing which way the wind's blowing. They
are
allowed
people. We
forget now they are actually allowed to do things.
Right. People want conviction and a plan, and and people who actually behave based on what
to go too far downfield, but they are actually allowed to do things.
Reminder: both our parties, you are allowed to pass laws. So I think Rob had a summer where he promised big, bold action from the Lakers, and big, bold action didn't come. The Lakers did good stuff. I'm not saying that wasn't a good summer, but like people wanted trades. They wanted that first rounder thrown in. They wanted those expiring deals moved because that's kind of what they were promised going into the summer. It wasn't I don't think they made mistakes because those things I don't think there were good deals available to them. The closest thing is maybe this Wiggins conversation, which may have shifted a little bit. We'll try to get to that in the next segment or, through the week. But he still responds to it. And so what are we doing? Don't worry, folks. It's not because we can't make stuff. It's because we have a plan. It's because we know what we're going to do. We're maximizing. Don't worry. It's all purposeful. Luka goes out and plays really well and looks again like the most dominant player, if not the second or third most dominant player on our planet Earth. And Rob again sees like, this message of, I got to make sure people don't think that like we're just going to hang out until 2027. Like, we would improve ourselves right now. We're willing to take contracts on. And he can say all of these things, Andy, as we've both pointed out, knowing full well there is no contract for him to take on right now. There is no deal for him to make that is quote unquote all in. So I think Pete's theory and Darius' theory, I love that. I hope it's true. If that's it, and then it's a great strong signal from ownership. Then I just think a lot of this is just how Rob operates. Like, this is a moment where the Lakers are feeling really good about themselves. And Rob gets chattier when the Lakers feel really good about themselves. And so before we go to the break, though, I want to touch on this question for a couple minutes on optionality, because the star you have matters. Like, part of the reason LeBron's teams were always so dominant was both because LeBron, but also because while there is an ideal formula to put around a LeBron James operated team, he's so good and the skill set is so vast and diverse, he can kind of make anything work. Mm-hmm. Luka Doncic is such an otherworldly offensive player. Nikola Jokic, these guys are so good and so visionary and so next level on that side of the ball. They provide you not just optionality we can go out and sign another star. You can kind of go out and get a lot of different combinations of things. You don't have to be locked into one. If you have Trae Young as your star, your second, third, fourth guys kind of need to be a very specific thing. There are other players like that around the league who are excellent. They are your number one. They put up big numbers, but they don't offer you quite as much because you have to compensate for them. And really the only thing you need to compensate for with Luka is you need to make sure you can find some defensive play.
That's what I was going to say is the main difference between Luka and LeBron. Like, so it's clear, Luka is a better player than Trae Young by a significant margin, just because you mentioned Trae specifically. And Luka is clearly at worst, top 5 player in the league. You could put him 4, 3, 2, maybe depending on how this season shakes out, he might end up looking like the best player in the league. I don't think that's impossible at all.
Nope,
but the difference between what is now, we have just entered prime Luka, and prime LeBron is prime LeBron was a two-way force.
Sure.
Like an all defense level two-way force.
I
was going to say
part of Kobe versus LeBron argument. Kobe had that two-way ability. Like,
absolutely.
You didn't have to compensate as much. Obviously, he wasn't tall, so like wasn't, but like you didn't need to find somebody to be like, okay, we've got
prime Kobe was a lockdown vicious defender.
Correct. I mean, and like there are stars where you need to find and as they all of them as they get older. But you're right, I agree with you. But you have optionality to build around Luka in multiple ways.
Right.
That affords a flexibility to your GM that makes it so you are less likely to fall into that trap of like, this is the other star that becomes available. These are the other players that become available. It's not a great fit, but we just kind of shoehorn them onto what we got because this is the only opportunity that we have. Luka lifts a lot of that burden.
LeBron is about as you can put anybody around him and it'll work, as we've seen in the league. Luka is pretty close, but there are some degrees of difference in specifications, which leads to the points raised by Robert Horry.
Gets that next. Yeah.
Locked on Lakers is brought to you by Monarch Money, and most people, they cannot name all of their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether 401ks, properties, investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why Monarch Money is there for you. An all-in-one personal finance tool, bringing your entire financial life together in a clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. You can link all your accounts together in minutes, get categorizations of your spending, and feel in control of your money without even using a spreadsheet. And look, like my daughter, as an example, she just started high school, which means I am now already thinking about college and tuition, dorm expenses, and that's overwhelming. Monarch can help me streamline the spending, figure out areas where I can be more efficient, save better, create a plan for the next step. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year.
We don't need to get deep into the weeds on this, the details, but if you missed it, and this is what we were referencing with the potential shift in the Andrew Wiggins market, I don't think anything's going to happen quickly, but Tyler Hero, who is the co-star of the Miami Heat, depending on whether you think he or Bam is better play, whatever. But he is one of the two big stars on the Heat.
He's certainly their leading scorer.
Off-season ankle surgery is going to cost him some of the regular season, and so the Heat have been they're sort of a marginal, I think, Eastern Conference contender, if you want to call them that. Like playoff team, not contender, but like a marginal playoff team.
I consider them marginal to get into the play-in.
That's what I'm saying. Well, okay. So a marginal playoff team in the
I'd be surprised if they finish top 6.
Fair. Right.
Yeah.
So you take away Tyler Hero from an already marginal team. It could change the calculus of what they would insist to get back for Andrew Wiggins, other trades they might be able or willing to make over the course.
Unless Wiggins gets thrust into a role where he just starts crushing it, and all of a sudden I'm serious. All of a sudden his value just rises because he looks closer to the dude who had his career year in Golden State the year they won the championship.
Right. So it just that is the context that could change the shape of the Andrew Wiggins trade market over the course of the first couple months of the season. But Robert Horry, Andy, some provocative comments about the future of Austin Reaves with the Lakers.
Yeah, on Robert Horry's own podcast, he was talking about Austin Reaves and said, quote, if the Lakers are smart, they would do a sign and trade, talking about this coming off season. And the reason I say that is because when you have a team with two players who are pretty much the same, meaning Luka and AR, I'm not saying they have the same skill set. They play the same position, pretty much do the same thing. It's a wash. Don't get me wrong. I love AR, but you don't need two of the same players. And this is Horry echoing some of the concerns I've talked about a lot with Austin Reaves, who, like Horry, I think is a very good player, full stop, no caveats. I think Austin's very good. But I think Austin and Luka require a lot of the same support system around them to offset a lot of the same weaknesses. And Austin next season is no longer going to be one of the best bargains in the league. Like when he starts making 30 plus, as everybody expects, I think there's a very good chance that the contract won't seem bad, but it's not the same thing as what he's making right now in the teens. And even though 30-ish mil is not an insane portion of your cap, it's not insignificant either. And when you start thinking about the pieces that I think are best needed to reinforce Luka and where your cap space is allotted, if you have two primarily one-way players, or maybe the best version of Austin, one and a half way.
I think if you slot him in the right spot defensively, it's fine. It's just
but he can't be slotted.
He's been too often slotted into the, go out and guard somebody's primary player, and that's clearly not where he plays.
Right. But part of the problem is, to the point I was raising, in order to slot him into the theoretical right spot, you have to bring in more players that make it possible, as opposed to Austin just kind of being able to do it on his own organically.
Sure. A Jalen Williams type. Yeah.
And, I've expressed my concerns before about the potential limitations and problems that can come when your top two players, if the Lakers envision Austin that way, neither of them are bona fide two-way players. It is difficult to find contenders without that sort of setup. Maybe you could look at Denver and say they don't have it. Houston, maybe not, but at the same time, Houston has so much defense around Kevin Durant, who can crank it up if he needs to. Maybe they become exceptions, but for the most part, Houston's
being a good defensive team.
For the most part, most of the top end teams, one of their top two players is a bona fide two-way player. And I think that's extremely important.
I think a couple things about this. First of all, I don't think the design is for Austin to be the two, so to speak. I don't think, like, people talk about when LeBron's done, that Austin ascends into, and he might in the short term, but I think the long-term plan would still be to bring in more talent that is either arguably better than Austin, on the same level of Austin, or whatever it might be.
It's got to be better than Austin. It has to be.
I would think so. Or you need two or three, again, you look at the New York model or something like that, where, you have, Brunson, but then you also have Cat. It's like, there's,
and we've seen some limitations with that.
Right. But they've surrounded those guys with a lot of really good two-way players. New York's a pretty good team. I mean, everybody's got some sort of weakness except for apparently, and look, I mean, Denver almost beat Oklahoma City.
Sure.
So it's like, they are not a perfect team either. So, I mean, I think the ultimately the plan is still to go out and get another player who slots somewhere in between Austin and Luka. The issue becomes who is available, who can you get? What can you use to get them? New York made some shrewd moves to acquire some of their players, but they also gave up massive amounts of stuff to go get Mikal Bridges, and the Lakers, it's going to take 6 years for them to come up with that kind of stash. So I do separate those things a little bit. I don't have a problem with the idea of trading AR. If like there's a deal out there where you can get somebody who is, because I see it less as can Luka and AR, like can you and more, and can Luka and AR play together?
The answer is yes.
Obviously, the answer is yes. I think the bigger question for me is, can you maximize Reaves in a system with Luka, presumably another star, and then Austin? And I think at $35 million, maximizing doesn't have to mean he has, a massive usage rate and all these, but like, can you get everything out of him, or would your resources be better, allocated towards a true 3-and-D, whatever? Like, and I think that's fine. But again, I'll go back to the optionality thing. Reaves, in some ways, is a pretty versatile player himself. Agreed. And he does provide you a pretty broad skill set, mostly on one side of the ball. I'm not denying that. And everybody says, well, go out and get like just go get a 3-and-D wing. And I'll be like, all right, but like everybody wants those guys. Everybody wants those guys. And so to get a true difference maker on that side of the ball, a true 3-and-D star, there aren't very many of them. And can you use Austin Reaves in a sign and trade for that? Maybe.
Depends on what the other team needs.
Right. I think what you're saying, what Rob, and I'm not trying to pick on Robert Horry, but like I think it was essentially saying here is, if you can go, the point he's making is the same as one that you've made, and I think it's a valid one. He's saying, like, can you go get a better player? Can you go get a better fit? And if the answer to those things is yes, then you can trade Austin. I just don't know. I am skeptical of what will be available for him in an environment where making sign and trades is increasingly more challenging. I'm skeptical as to what will be available, and I am only open to the idea of trading down a level in talent to upgrade your fit. I'm only open to that to a very small extent, because fit changes yearly.
What
you might think what fits really look like it fits really well on paper this year, next year could be a disaster. And I generally think you are better keeping more talented players.
Look, talent matters in the NBA, and Austin is a talented player. The last thing I would say on this, just though, in terms of the complications that arrive with a Luka Austin, if not foundation, big piece of that foundation, is the third best player on the team needs to be a high-end defender at that point. Like, needs to be.
No question.
There's no way.
Starting lineup needs to be able to defend.
Right. And like, this gets into the reasons why I harped on why it was so important for the Lakers to end the 1+1 setup with LeBron in perpetuity, regardless of whether they bring back LeBron in 2026 or not, which I think is still an open live possibility, depending on how things go. But a potential setup moving forward where you are locked into Luka, LeBron at a max contract, and Austin at 35-ish mil, those three guys at this stage of LeBron's career all being very much offensively forward players with a lot of, I don't want to say redundancy, because I think they can play well off each other, but there's a lot of replication. I don't think you can build a championship roster that way. So, and this isn't, I'm not making this about LeBron. I'm talking about just skill sets and needs. Like, this is, if anything, more of a question about Austin than LeBron, because Austin is the guy that is projected to be around longer than LeBron. But if Luka was a two-way player, I would say perfect. Bring in Austin.
If Luka's a two-way player, would be the best player on the planet.
Oh, absolutely. But I'm just saying, or if say the Lakers had Ant as their star, I would say Austin, perfect, fine. Yeah. Like, even someone like Shea, I would say perfect, fine. But
Yeah, you still need support. It's just
you need support anyway. But I'm just talking about their foundation.
The flip side of that is that third star, that third player, however you want to define it as a star, fourth player, whatever, and then fourth player, fifth player, whatever. They do not need to be offensive juggernauts. They need to be functional offensive players, and so you have more flexibility that way. We'll see. They have a lot of time to figure this out, which is the other benefit to how everything has gone this summer. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go hang out. Over 36,000 subscribers to the channel. We will see everyone tomorrow.